Hello, my Agony Aunties. So I have a question that I think you will be better positioned to answer than me. I feel stuck and disheartened about my dating life. I've been open to meeting people, but despite trying apps, socializing more, and being told I'm a great catch, I haven't been able to find a boyfriend. It's starting to feel like it's never going to happen. And I'm questioning whether there's something wrong with me. How can I keep hope alive and stay patient when it feels like everyone else is finding love but me? It's so painful, so hard. I really feel for her.
Yeah, and I think I found my husband before dating apps were a thing. But lots of my friends have been through that as a sort of way of meeting people. And it feels like such a horrible experience for so many people, while also incredibly common, is that it's a very disheartening process where it feels often like rejection after rejection after rejection, and a huge amount of kind of labor of dating lots of people and feeling very little hope along the way. And most of the people I know go through phases where they sort of come on the apps and then they come off the apps. They sort of recover and restore their confidence and let it go for a while, and then they go back in again when they feel more ready and resilient, because it does take this big sort of emotional, it's like having this other job as well, like the messaging and the replies. Oh, that person's ghosted me. Oh, go on a date, wasn't right. Having to use your
the hope and the crash.
Yeah, and so having to use up time you'd like to spend with friends dating people, and then the dates up. It's a really demanding process.
I think the other thing about the apps is they are designed to keep you on them to make money. They are not designed for you to find a match. So that in some ways they are set up to keep you matching and being disappointed, or matching for a few dates and then being disappointed, rather than finding a match and getting off the app.
Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who met their husband on an app, so I sort of have.
He'll be thrilled you said that, by the way. He'll be pleased
I feel like people are not embarrassed about that anymore.
No, it's a normal thing now.
Yeah,
I thought he might be.
Sorry to generationally shame you, Mum, but
yes,
okay.
People don't feel embarrassed about that anymore.
Okay, yeah.
But gosh, I really relate to that. The pain of feeling alone, and it's awful, particularly at this time of year. And there's sort of something about, gosh, it's sort of like walking in the dark, and you see everybody else's lights on in their houses, and you kind of imagine all these like happy, connected people inside, and you're kind of outside on your own. And I think it's very, very painful. And dating, it can be grim and result in a lot of good stories and a lot of boring stories, and can be very soul crushing. And it sounds like you're doing a lot, like you're working really, really hard to try and find somebody. And I can only sort of think of the things that helped me personally that may really not connect to you. So just take them or leave them, really, like all our Agony Aunties advice. And maybe this is impossible, but partly of what helped me is sort of making peace with being on my own. And that's really easy advice to give and much more difficult advice to do. But I remember my older sister got married quite young and have children quite young. And I remember leaving her house where there was all this sort of like family noise and chaos, and like a sort of real sense of busyness, and everybody like being together, and sort of walking to the tube on my own and feeling very alone, because I was very alone. And I guess sort of alongside that was also an awareness of the things that I could do because I was on my own that I wouldn't have been able to do if I had to think about somebody else. And one of the things that I did was, like move countries. So I like, maybe this is just annoying advice and not helpful, but I think it did help me a bit to sort of think of the things that I could do because I was on my own, as opposed to the things that I was missing, or like alongside the things that I was missing, I suppose. And I I'm sure that there's nothing wrong with you. You're like a human, so you'll have all the things that humans have. And I think for me, I definitely did have not. There was nothing wrong with me, but I know that just me personally, I was a bit like Chandler and Friends, where like and still am really, in terms of somebody would hold a fork wrong or smell a bit funny, or and I'd be like, oh, I
Quite
can't see that
choosy.
person again. Yeah, choosy, afraid of being vulnerable. Just describe it how you will, Mum.
Nothing wrong with being choosy.
I guess I sort of think I know that came from I wanted to be with somebody and I was afraid of being with somebody. And that I think is really typical of most people, but sometimes worth looking at.
Yes. Yeah. I think that thing of being able to hold both, that even if we all have tricky relational things and they may be getting in the way of us finding a relationship, and that's not the same as we're not going to find somebody who can love us and that we'll love. It's just something we're navigating. I listened to today on Therapist Uncensored. I was having a bit of a podcast day. They have a series called Disarming Human Defenses. And I listened to one about power dynamics. And basically they were talking about one of those strategies that we can use to protect against intimacy. And it's a sort of, that whole series is kind of like, you're curious about, do I struggle to find intimacy? That's maybe a very gentle way of exploring whether any of those things resonate for you. Obviously, also therapy is an option as well, to be curious about either supporting yourself in your, how can I be more embracing of the things that are positive about this, as well as being curious about what relationship means to you and why it might be difficult, because to sort of support both ends, I guess, of that experience. And then again, I don't know if this is be helpful, but I have one of my really close friends is single, and we talk a lot about our lives. And I know that one of the things that she finds quite helpful is hearing about how my life is still complicated and hard and lonely and difficult, and relationships are hard, that they can be a fantasy. I think I was speaking maybe for her, but she says that knowing, I think there's sometimes this idea that once you have a family and children, it is like that little warm, cozy image you painted them, and that kind of aloneness and loneliness and pain is so much better. And I think she finds it rather comforting to realize that actually life is still really hard and relationally complicated with a partner. It may be some things are different hard, but it's not like, on the other side in the land of relationships, everything is good. And that can be a thing that was sold culturally in all our Disney movies and as well.
The only thing I would add is, in the two extremes of hope and despair, that hope is a muscle. It is something that if we practice it, even with little tiny hopes, that we can build and strengthen. And I think linking to what Sophie and Emma said is that having hope about yourself being relational, or having hope in yourself about you finding joy, having hope in yourself that you are of worth innately, single or dating, you can make those hopes happen by working on them. And as a practical thing, I would think about doing things that you enjoy that involve other people. So whether it's joining a running club or a cycling club or art or going to museums, that kind of thing, where you can meet other people who have similar interests, that sometimes meeting people in person can be where it's kind of, there's no pressure because you're not on a date. I've just had clients where that's worked for, and so that might be something to think about.
Yes, and that reminded me, Mum, when you were talking about hope, when I was writing this series for the podcast about Substack series about hope, and this is sort of borrowing an idea from sort of climate activism, I guess. But this woman called Joanna Macy talks about active hope and defining two different kinds of hope. There's hope, which is wanting to know how likely something will be. And then that's the foundation in which you hold on to hope from. Oh, it's likely, it's not likely. And then we can fall into despair very easily from that place. And then she talks about hope as what you hope for, which is kind of what Mum was describing, of like, what's your wish? What are you hoping for? And then being active about that coming about. And that's what she calls active hope. So it's not dependent upon optimism or likelihood. It's about doing behaviors and holding on to the vision that you have for yourself or what you would like to happen, which is more about intention, really, in a way, and choices, which is the place where you have more agency. Whereas either a sort of passive from hope, this is what I want, but I want someone else or something else to bring this about for me, or I want it to be really likely to happen to be able to continue, is I think how most of us hold hope, but it's hard in the face of defeat to continue feeling hopeful from those places.
I think to key into that, and I'm sure I said this before, is there's some work by someone called Charles Snyder on hope. And he said hope isn't just a feeling, it's a plan A and a plan B, and the belief that you can make it happen. So that you're kind of being active, like you say, Sophie. It's like, what can I actually do? And like Emily said, I think that links to that, like being single, it means I have lots of opportunities to do things that I wouldn't if I was in a couple, and that might give me joy, and by accident it might mean I meet somebody. So thank you for your question, and we want to give you hope, and so that you can find it for yourself, and I hope it's helpful. Thank you.